Warning, the following video has flashing lights and also includes content that may be deemed inappropriate for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Jami King, you have made your way into the fox den and somehow found your way through the darkness of the mysterious forest and are here for another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on LordeStarfox Radio. We, as always, will be covering the Dogman topic. Much better. I do still always need to feed here or there to replenish my power sources, especially if we're dealing with something as nefarious as the Dogman.
Stood up. I said, oh my god, it's a werewolf. And everybody in the car freaked out.
My creatures of the night, yes, welcome back once again to another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on LordeStarfox Radio. Jami King has found his way into the Fox Den, and yes, he is a member of the Midnight Society. Every single one of my hosts and guests are, and tonight, we once again are sitting around the late night fire to burn the timber in an attempt to figure out what the heck is going on across the globe, but also in the United States with missing people, strange sightings, and unknown cryptids. How you doing tonight, man?
Hey, I'm good. Yeah, this is Jamie. I'm based in Ohio and Pennsylvania, and I'm here to talk with you about whatever topic you want to talk about.
Great stuff, man. I appreciate you popping in again. And to my audience that does follow Midnight Lycanthropy and the Midnight Society, Jami has been here before. I try to get him on monthly. He is also part of the Small Town Monsters crew. And yes, I did just have Heather and Aaron on the other night together. Great stuff. So now we're popping in with another member. What have you been up to, man? You want to tell the audience what you've been doing inside, outside of cryptids, or just a general, man?
I mean, basically, I'm a Bigfoot researcher, so like that's my perspective on the whole thing. But my wife and I we've both been tour guides at two of the most haunted places in America. So my perspective comes from a little bit of the woo side of things, but like scientifically people are looking into the woo. So that's where we're at. And most recently, like on your website, you have a cast of a potential Dogman print that we had casted. And recently we were out hiking on a forest therapy thing that we were doing, and we came across another print, but it was more on the lines of Bigfoot. So that's the most exciting thing that's happened recently.
Well, that's some great stuff right there. And
Yeah.
yes, to my audience, Jami, in my opinion, probably has the best Dogman print out there that we have not been able to prove belongs to any sort of known animal in the United States or globally. And also some other tracks that we have on file from Ohio and Texas that are really high quality too. Legit look like that same foot could have been fitting in there. So it is some very intriguing stuff, and it ties into things like the cave systems and how they all connect. And realistically, someone or something could hit up a cave system here in Maine and end up popping up somewhere down in Mexico, maybe even California. I mean, obviously, if we're able to travel above, well, I mean, we all do know Earth is built off of different layers just throughout geological history. There are cave systems everywhere, and there's a high probability that they connect. So it's interesting stuff. And I mean, I know in the Shenango Valley, there's old mines and cave systems and all kinds of things like that, which is your neck of the woods. So that's some pretty interesting stuff. And you had mentioned that you definitely specialize more in like the paranormal and some of the occult things, which is great because recently I was introduced to some pretty disturbing things, and I would like to throw some of that information your way. But if you would like to maybe just touch base again on how your original encounter went with when you were casting those footprints. I think there's some people that have yet to hear that might want to get caught up on how that all unfolded for you.
So I think you're referring to the ones that are on your website that we consider like potential Dogman prints. Basically, we found these prints, and my wife and I were together when we found them. And initially, when I looked down, I was like, "This is like a huge print. Like it's very, very big." And it was a series of prints that went into the water. And my wife and I were just talking about it recently because we were just out there. What we do remember about that was the prints went into the water, but we never saw an exit where it came out of the water. So that's one thing that I actually forgot to talk about with that print. And the area where these prints were found, I had interviewed people who had had Dogman encounters. So my wife, I had to end up taking her home to get casting material to come back. So I came back, and it was like just getting dark. And I remember pouring the casting material, sitting there, and you have to wait it out. And I'm looking up, and I'm just thinking, all these things kept going through my head about the print. But then I started remembering the different people that I had interviewed very close to this location where I had casted these prints. So that was going through my head, and I just kept thinking over and over again, like, I'm a little worried being there by myself, because normally, like, the protocol for me is I'm usually with someone else. You don't really want to research alone because of you don't know what's could happen. So it was kind of unnerving, and literally you're putting your hands into this cast. You're lifting a cast out of the ground of a potential cryptid that you don't know. And I'm literally holding this in my hands, thinking to myself, this could be a potential Dogman print. So it was, a little unnerving.
Yeah, I could see how that would be a tad bit unnerving for sure. Even for somebody such as myself that considers to be a creature of the night, I would be a little bit intimidated, being out there and realizing that obviously something had made that imprint. And to add a little bit more spice to what you had just said, I have at least five, six, seven, maybe eight if I sat down on my book and looked at aquatic reports of, Dogman. So to be quite honest with you, I'm not really surprised that you didn't see tracks that came out because most likely it either swam to the other side or potentially even into a burrow that it had somewhere nearby in to the riverbank or lake bank as well. So
Yeah, I mean, those are all things that I thought about. But, Jenny and I were out there just recently, and she and I were both talking about it. And we're like, we saw these tracks go into the water, but they did not come out. So that was just one thing that really, when you start thinking about details, that's one thing that we left out. But I know on the other shoreline, it goes to this like really remote area where people ride their ATVs. And that in that particular area, the entrance to that area, there was a witness that said that they had saw this thing cross the road that was like a Dogman, and it was 4 people in a vehicle that witnessed it. So travel pattern, if it was.
makes sense. Like I said, path of least resistance. And also, I mean, as stated, numerous cases of them looking for shellfish and seemingly, messing around with something in shallow water before swimming out to deeper water. So it is really intriguing right there and great stuff, man. Definitely keep plugging away and be safe out there and make sure to keep us updated. And now, oh man, this is some pretty interesting yet dark stuff. So recently I was introduced to, I've spoken about it in a couple of my episodes, so I'm not going to list all the books title wise just because half of them are hard to pronunciate and you are a busy guy. So, long story short, is there are so many books about the occult, but there's at least 20 that are quote unquote cursed and banned and hidden by the Vatican or supposedly unable to be found or only minimal copies, yet they all deal with really interesting things, whether it's supposedly being able to talk to angels, which I've mentioned this before. Again, I'm spiritual, not religious, but anyone out there that has never seen what biblical angels look like, it's a heck of a different depiction compared to Hollywood, that where you think you see, an angelic looking figure come down. No, these things have crazy amounts of eyes and look like strange things, that's for sure. But apparently you're able to talk to those. You can summon the crispy boy himself, also Lilith, and some lesser demons underneath of them. And you are able to summon things that look like, honestly, the Jersey Devil, shadow figures, winged shadow figures, black-eyed entities. Werewolves is because it's the occult here, not Dogman. There's a huge difference. And even vampiric-like entities. Well, you can supposedly become these things, which the more you do it, the less you have for your humanity before you fully stay into this. Or you can basically supposedly control these type entities, okay? And this is something that the Dirty Stash and Heinrich Himmler and the SS all had a massive interest in, was the occult. And well, there's also a castle in the Czech Republic called Castle Uska, which is literally in the middle of nowhere, and it's built over a huge pit where people for centuries have reported seeing everything I just spoke to you also coming out of this area. And this castle is built to keep something in. Okay, there's no running water, there's no food sources. It's legit in the middle of nowhere, and the weapons and things are not focused outwards, it's inward, has no way to defend itself from the outside, and it supposedly is built over, quote unquote, the pits of hell. Well, guess who found interest in that? Heinrich Himmler. So he was there again, testing the occult, doing all kinds of experimentations, and recently, over 13,000 occult books were found by the Czechs in an abandoned dirty stash bunker of the SS. Okay, so they had 13,000 books in there. Whether or not, I guess, fully someone, has a certain dominant opinion about the topic. Well, when you have 13,000 books that are supposedly diving into things that all the other quote unquote banned ones are, man, you're going to do and find some sort of information in there. And we all know he was involved in all that stuff and really took an interest into it. So now, before I kind of dive into the next part of that, I just wanted to get your opinion on that.
I mean, like as you're talking to me about these books that are banned. I would want to know who's banning them. So you're saying it's the church banning them. So they're either trying to hide something or they're trying to keep knowledge to themselves. That's the first thing I thought of. And I went to school in Slovakia, so I traveled well in Czech Republic. So I've never heard of that place. I'm gonna have to look it up when I get off of here.
100%. And yeah, it's strange. And whether, again, I don't dive into religion, but I do know whether it's Christianity or Muslim based religions or other cultures that have nothing to do with either of those religions, with their own religious based aspects, all ban these books, man. And a lot of them are unable to be deciphered, have strange looking plants and stuff in there. And some people think that if you do decipher it, well, who knows what's going to happen. Some people that have deciphered some of these books a little bit had horrible luck. Others found out that they're even older texts than these original texts. So there's more to it. And then others can't be figured out whatsoever. Super interesting right there, man. And you have like Dennis Carroll, who is one of our occult specialists here at the North American Dogman Project. When it comes to skinwalkers and such, okay, right? Same thing, and Nordic culture, and now with the occult here, you do very similar things. And all those cultures would have not been speaking to each other at this point in time, but it still consists of smoking somebody close to yourself, doing really messed up things to animals, pets, whatever, getting pelts of these things. So it doesn't matter, okay, whether it's becoming a skinwalker, becoming a werewolf in Nordic lore, or in the occult. A lot of the practices are similar, but then here are the differences. You know, the skinwalker is he or she that walks on all fours and becomes that animal, okay? They don't become the raging beast. But when you look into the occult, that's when you get the hellhounds, you get the werewolves and things that are summoned from, you know, negative energy and curses and all kinds of demonic type activity. So that's where there's a massive difference. The cynocephali, okay, with Herodotus and Ctesias, they were not demonic or anything like that. According to the Greeks, they were just like you and I, flesh and blood that lived in the mountains and the caves, had nothing to do with any sort of religious text. The Greeks did not follow modern day religion whatsoever, would have had no clue about it, okay? So their opinion of things wouldn't have been influenced by anything except for what they were witnessing at that point in time to even document it, because the Greeks were a very stingy culture in regards, same thing with the Romans, of documenting things unless it was straight up important and was also documented by other people. They didn't really look highly upon people that just documented history and such. They, to them, were kind of bums. You know what I mean? They were a culture that was about like conquering and basically trying to be more or less immortal. So when they documented things, it held stature. Okay. And they even speak about like King Lycan as well, which doesn't necessarily have as much to do with the occult aspect, but it's still a curse, which is interesting. So now when you look into some of these areas, okay, like Route 666, that is now 491. I've tapped on that. You have all these cars and things that are abandoned, you know, sightings of werewolves, or could it be dogmen or hellhounds all over the place. You have Clifton Road, New Jersey, same thing. Abandoned cars, missing people, dogmen, werewolves, hellhound sightings, Sasquatch, strange stuff. But what I really wanted to blow your mind with is this area called Cleveland Forest in Southern California. Specifically, this area called Black Star Canyon. You ever heard of this spot?
I personally have never heard of it. No, no. You say in California.
Yes, because at first when you hear Cleveland, you think, oh, that's got to be in Ohio. So, I mean, that's when I was reading and such. I initially thought that until I saw the location listed and I looked it up. But have you heard of the other two places I mentioned? You know, that highway and also Clifton Road, New Jersey?
If you're talking about Route 666, that runs through Pennsylvania through the Allegheny National Forest.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm well aware of that.
Okay. And now, you know, they've changed it to 491. And I actually touched base on this a little bit last night when someone had asked me, do I think that the reference of the 666 has anything to do with the paranormal that's occurring on this area? I personally don't. And here's the reason why. I do think that maybe this land was, or sorry, this highway was built through maybe some indigenous graveyards or areas that had already had some bad juju in the past that had been cursed. And then when it was, you know, named Route 666, then you probably got some bozos that went out there because it was titled that and then potentially started doing things related to that, which would now maybe cause some negative stigmata on that. But also, a lot of people don't realize when you look up 666 outside of religion, man, it doesn't have a negative meaning, the mark of the devil and things like that. That's only something more or less like in a religious aspect of that. So that's why I was saying potentially I don't think just the title of that would have caused all the negative aspects until maybe people were diving into that, the occult stuff, or if these highways were built right through areas they shouldn't have in general.
I agree with you. I think that the Native American lands, like there were things that were already part of the DNA of the land, which I've talked about this before in other places, that I think that Sasquatch and Dogman and a lot of these things are part of the culture. So it becomes part of the land. I don't necessarily know that the number 666 has a negative connotation. I mean, it does have a negative connotation, but I don't think it's negative.
Exactly. Thank you. Because that's what I'm all about here is, just always trying to encourage people to just look outside of the box, around the box, be subjective, objective, and yeah, just realize, sure, in the religious aspect, the mark of the beast or whatever, but then when you look it up in other aspects, it doesn't mean something hell related or devil related. So no, it's interesting. But now in this part of this forest, there's definitely some shady stuff that was occurring. So apparently, in modern times, I don't know about indigenous times or have I had a chance to dive into it, but I do know all across the country, indigenous cultures were forced out of their area. So it would not surprise me if Southern California also potentially had some negative repercussions energy wise from that. But in June 1889, you had the first unaliving occur, more or less, between an argument where somebody owed these two guys money for a horse, but he claimed he already paid. Well, shootout ensued. They smoked this dude, they burned him, all this stuff, and for some reason were never held to justice for it, and that kind of caused some negative juju. But now, fast forward, you have people that have seen all kinds of gnarly things in this forest, whether it's dogmen or werewolf looking things, skinwalkers, Sasquatch, Wendigo looking things. There's a lot that has been seen there. And at first, you'd be like, wow, that's a lot going on in this area. And that's what I was thinking until I started listening to these groups of people, man. All right, not just one person, actual different three, two, four groups of people that had no connection with each other, that had very similar experiences. But the most haunting one is this group of people that were out there and they start to hear what seems to be potentially chanting, they thought, or was it just the wind? They couldn't tell. But they're already kind of up on edge, like I tell you in general. When people, we get ourselves worked up, man. That's just how we are. Obviously, if you and I, look into something and we just got done watching, I don't know, it's Halloween time, Dog Soldiers or something, bro. And then you and I decide to go out in the forest and maybe do some research. No matter what, our mind is already kind of planting the mood for us a little bit. That's something we can't control, man. It's just how your mind works. So obviously, if the historical aspects of this forest, people already know about it. You're out there, you're already gonna kind of have that little ooh spooky vibe. So yeah, who knows? It could have been wind, like I said, or voices. That's a realistic assumption. Well, they start to find these weird looking tracks, okay? They didn't have pictures for us, which and whatever, but sounds from the description similar to potentially maybe Dogman, Sasquatch. I don't know. I wasn't there, but some similarities. So they keep going, and then they end up having one of the people get scratched by something from the dark, and they see what looks to be like a pale crawler. Interesting stuff, okay? But then as this group gets closer, they realize it was chanting that they're hearing. So they sneak up and they see a group of people that look to be holding some sort of book around a fire, all have strange hoods on. One's holding a ram head. I don't know about the occult, but who knows what they were doing, man? I don't know. But they claimed they were doing these strange chants and everything. And all of a sudden, one of them, boom, just looked right over. It's like he knew they were there. They were like, oh, crap. So they just back up slowly and start heading back to their car. These people didn't pursue them or anything. But when they got back to their car, there was a sticky note on there saying, please stay out of here. You're not welcome. We do not want to see you here again. And that was super creepy. But some of the other groups of people also have reported seeing what looked to be cloaked figures, lurking in the shadows and such. And that's, again, kind of before we, start to like wrap this up, why I brought that up, because it seems to be occultish again. I mean, you have obviously some sort of seance or ceremony going out there, and you already have an area that's got some negative type influence, but now you have people that are claiming to see a lot of different cryptids in this area, and Personally, I do not think dogmen have anything to do with the paranormal. I think skinwalkers and werewolves do. Yes, I believe the cynocephali, just like Herodotus, just like Ctesias, just like Alexander the Great said, they are hellacious warriors, but they can be smoked just like a person. They would much rather have had them on their side than against them because they are savages, but cold steel would take those things down, okay? That's not paranormal to me. Paranormal to me is something that even if you got a semi-automatic or a machine gun or a grenade, it doesn't do anything to it, man. You know, I mean, as far as I know, unless on a funny note, you and I are part of the new Ghostbusters or something, dude, and we got like Egon telling us how to, roll and catch like Slimer over here. I don't think a shotgun and a sword works on a ghost, man. I mean, it doesn't seem to do that type of stuff. If you're physical, such as you and I, then you can be unalived. I mean, end of story. Whether you're a T-Rex, a cynocephaly, a giant crocodile, a black bear, it doesn't matter, man. If you are physical in this realm, you breathe air, you sleep, you can be sent from this area as well. But now when you have the occult stuff, that brings up a little bit more of the I don't think you can properly handle that unless you are specialized in that, meaning you could have the badass, sword or a huge machine gun, but if something's not physically in a realm, you're pretty much crap out of luck. I guess I wanted to hear pretty much your thoughts on that.
I mean, I'm sitting here listening to you, and all of these words, like we use the word occult. You're using the word physical, woo, all of that. But to me, they're all claiming that it was physical. So they're claiming that it's physical. But I mean, even people claim that ghosts can be physical. Like there's physical, like these haunted locations that I've worked at, we've seen physical beings walking towards us that you could probably touch, but it doesn't mean that it's physical. Like they walk between two different realms and their physical appearance is physical. Like I think the classic ghost or paranormal thing that you think of is something that you can see through. But I think
Hmm.
that in the world of paranormal research, people have seen things that are 100% physical. They've spoken, they've used language, spoken to people. So like to me, the whole the way we think about the paranormal, the way we think about the physical aspect can be very different when you're in a location like you're talking about this place in California. You were discussing notes being left on a vehicle. So to
Hmm.
me, that somebody physically left a note there. So there is some
Yes.
group there doing ceremonies. And, like from my experience, our words and what we put out to the universe have power. Like I think that that's the part of humans that we don't realize. Like you've been talking all night about manifesting and creating these things, and I think that a lot of things can be created just from our own words and our own thoughts. Like you can sketch yourself out in a haunted location and your brain can start going in different directions, and pay attention to that kind of stuff. Pay attention to like who's with you in a location. I'm always curious about the witness, these people that are going to these locations and claiming to see what they saw. I always like to know more about the witness and who's experienced it. And you can get so much from reading another person's encounter, but if you know people that physically or personally that have had experiences, that's important.
Great stuff, man. And no, I agree totally. And that's why it's important to get people such as yourself and Dennis and others that really specialize, in the occult and paranormal and stuff. And I guess more or less kind of what I was trying to hint at is according to like Alexander the Great, these things would be picking up like say a weapon as well. So as it's fighting beside him and potentially one of his soldiers drops a weapon and is unalive, this thing is now picking that up as well. And they were also exchanging goods, meaning I guess if this was say a paranormal cynocephaly, as it came down and gave you goods and then you exchanged like gold or salt back for that trade. I don't know. I mean, can a paranormal entity more or less be doing that, like I said, picking up like weapons that are on the ground, fighting beside you, trading with you, and also then being unalived in front of you as well, where literally they all watch them bleed out, no different than like a person. And I mean, you have a farmer reporting that as it charged at him, he had basically a sharpened like stick or spear. This is a really old encounter where it impaled itself and unalived it. And yeah, so that's what's, interesting to me. And then you got the Indian culture over in India talking about them again making their own armor and trading with them and trading the armor with them, where people are physically now wearing this and using it. So that's why it's interesting, because I mean, you got the obviously physical, supernatural, and potentially extraterrestrial aspects, but that's why it's really good to have different people that specialize in things, because like I said, werewolves and skinwalkers and things like that are really definitely paranormal based. But then when you got the cynocephali and dire wolves and cave hyenas and the dinopithecus, like the baboon looking dogmen that people are seeing, and the ones that look like hyenas and such, like those all existed at points in time and really still, according to our science team, exist. And that's also what I mean about like physical, beings as well, meaning that if someone's seeing a hyena, and sure, I guess like Ryan Tremblay was saying, is that animals also have spirits, and of course they do. So you're gonna see, manifestations, which we can definitely dive into that another time. Because when you look at like the Nahani Valley, you have reports of the indigenous cultures using bows and muskets shooting at the Shakuwaran, which looks like a giant hyena, and it's leaving tracks, but it's not doing any damage to it. But then this same tribe is now speaking about how their dogs are being found ripped apart at night and being fed on and having their skulls broken, which is all signs of hyena behavior. So when they were shooting at that first one, it very well could have been a manifestation of an animal that once roamed and, maybe was taken from its realm too soon. But then when they're finding their dogs ripped to pieces and all of that stuff, that kind of seems to fall into an actual remnant of a real hyena species still churning around.
Right, that's very physical. That's a very physical encounter. I mean, you really had me thinking with this, because like during the paranormal stuff that I've done, I have to think about like the times that people have seen things in buildings and how things interacted. Like for me, it's been doppelgangers. Like we've seen a person in one area of a building that appeared in another area of the building. We're on walkie talkies and they're like, I'm not there, but we actually saw this person. So there's that whole physicality part of it that, you know, to me is interesting. So I guess it's the learning curve is for me with people talking about cryptids, and then myself with the background in paranormal and the things that I've experienced or had people experience in a building with me. I have to put those together like a puzzle piece. So that's where I'm at with all this. I'm really just listening to a lot of stuff that you're saying, because you're very knowledgeable.
Man, kind words. No, I appreciate you a ton. And that's what this is all about for sure. And no, that's definitely why it all fits in, because 100%, man, there is a big paranormal aspect, which is like what I was saying with, the skinwalkers and werewolves and the occult. But then you have a really big physical aspect too, which is kind of how, I feel about the Dogman, like meaning I feel like that's like with the cynocephali and such. And again, before we let you go right here, because you know a ton about this, is same thing with like your tracks right there and how it was digging for clams and such. I mean, could a paranormal being have left that much physical evidence, man?
In my experience, I feel like yes. I feel like they really could.
Okay. Would you like
I,
to elaborate on that then a little bit? That's great stuff.
I mean, from my experience, like what I encountered with Sasquatch, my wife and I both, it began with a prayer. So, like, I'm praying to my dad who passed away. Dad, if you're here, can you give me a sign? And then we had this very physical encounter with what we believe to be Sasquatch. And then, as I'm reliving and thinking about this over and over in my head, I'm in my car and I really think about that power of that prayer. So then that really got me in this trajectory of like our thoughts and our prayers and energy go somewhere. So now I research in a way that's more energetic. So I think of everything in terms of energy. And I think that our thoughts definitely can manifest things and manifest them in a physical form, that they can leave tracks. Because like literally we were just on this forest therapy with this woman from Portugal, and we were doing this energetic ley line type forest therapy with groups of people in Portugal and groups of people here at Shenango. And during the meditation that we did, we were meditating on nature, but I was also at the location close to where we had our Bigfoot encounter. And during this whole meditation, we have a time frame where you can go out into the forest and engage with the trees and interact and whatever you might be doing. And we walked out onto this area. One of the guys walked out, and he looked, as soon as he stepped down, he found an arrowhead. And in my meditation, I was meditating on the Native Americans that lived there. So like, it's super strange that he would step out, find this perfect arrowhead. And all the years that I've lived at Shenango, I have never found an actual arrowhead. So that was super cool that he found that, but that was in our meditation. Then we're walking along and we find this track that is like a Sasquatch track. So this stuff was all on my mind. So like, the whole thing about energetically what we're thinking and stuff, like you're talking about this place in California where all these people go and they have encounters. What's on their mind before they get there? Are these people thinking about the history of that area, and then things are manifesting? And that's just what I'm thinking listening to all this.
Man, great stuff, bro. That's why I love the way you think right there. And I know you're super busy, but before I let you go here, again, then, how do you feel about, how I was saying to you, the trading with the Greeks, the Romans, with the cynocephali, them making their armor, them being, unalived, etc. And also, say when people are, saying, hey, it ripped my animals apart and it's doing these things. Is that something that seems, again, paranormal to you? Could a paranormal entity literally take you and I and just rip us in half in front of somebody and start eating you? I mean, is that something that they seem to be doing? Because, like, when you have the Beast of Bray Road, would a paranormal entity be literally picking up a piece of road and consuming it as you watch the bodily fluids come out of the animal and hear the crunch, crunch, crunch? I mean, is that something a paranormal entity could be doing? And also, again, with like Alexander the Great, could all these Greek soldiers be fighting with or against something that's paranormal, and literally they're just using their swords and unaliving them, and vice versa? Are they just all, seeing this, I guess?
I feel like that things change the way we use words. So the word paranormal to me might actually be used in a different way, where it's more ultra terrestrial. Like, I think that those type of things, if you think in terms of energy, I think that they can. Yes, I really do. Like, if you think of aliens, like, let's just talk about aliens. There's abductions where people are taken away. Like, we're talking about missing 411s, and people come up missing, and sometimes Sasquatch is related to that. In England, they have like the dire wolves and things, people come up missing. Like, it, I don't know, I think the word paranormal is misused. I think it's more like an ultra terrestrial type thing. But I mean, I get where you're going with this, and like, it's hard to think that something could rip apart your dog, but it's possible. Like, I mean, I guess you just have to keep an open mind with it. Like, it's very possible.
No, exactly. And that's why it's super important, and why I'm glad to always be in touch with you and have, members of my team that specialize in that stuff, because I'm a journalist, I'm subjective, objective, and, the way I approach things is, no matter what, I am a healthy skeptic about something. And I've never seen anything paranormal based, never had experiences like that. And I just approach things as much as possible with a clean, logical mind. And once things don't plug into like the scientific aspects or some of the logical aspects, then, I reach out to some people such as yourself and others and try to figure out, well, where does it plug in? But I always try to specifically start with like the physical stuff first and the logical scientific aspects. Just, like a quick example, somebody recently got a hold of us and their phone, quote unquote, got zapped or is getting zapped in this area. And I've heard about that before as well. But then, like, our geologist was saying, well, that area has a ton of natural minerals and rocks that just put off energy all the time. And yes, that would zap electronics and have magnetic poles and all kinds of things like that. So who knows? Did he really get zapped by something, or was he just dealing with natural magnetic poles of the earth? So that's what I mean about always trying to start from what could be occurring first. And then once the pieces, don't plug in, then really being able to like step outside of the box and such. And again, I don't really know much about paranormal at all. It's interesting, but I cover, the missing person topic and the Dogman topic, and I still have yet to bring clarity to it.
There's no right or wrong. Nobody's right or wrong at this point. Like, you're really talking about things that people have experienced, and we're talking about things that you've read with the Greeks and the Romans and ancient aliens and all the stuff that they talk about. Like, is that really real History Channel stuff? But like, there's a new perspective in the whole thing, the way people are looking at the topic. So I commend you for looking at the topic in a scientific way, and I commend anyone that looks at it with a perspective on how they're viewing the world. They're their own reality. So I'm my own reality, you're your own reality, and we're meeting in the middle somewhere.
Which is super important. Yes, exactly. Because again, I don't know, the answers to this. And until someone out there finds the answers, none of us really do. But it's important just to be able to sit down and just figure out where things are falling into, what category. I mean, do the cynocephaly fall into the physical, or do they fall into the extraterrestrial, which means it doesn't have to come from outer space, cave systems and inner Earth. I mean, that's where they supposedly dwelled. And then you got the paranormal aspects. I mean, is it something more along the lines of that? So it's really interesting because there are parts of the Dogman equation that literally fall into everything, like I was saying. So that's why it's really important to have people that can, sit down and just have a different perspective on it. Meaning, say if, someone is talking to both you and I about their encounter, just by the way our minds work and such. I mean, obviously, we're going to start potentially seeing maybe a different side as to what could be occurring. But that's important because no matter what, you can't have a one-sided perspective. And same
No.
thing with, yeah, like people that support, like I have a friend, she loves what I do no matter what. Every video I put out, every image I make, she thinks it's dope. That's great, man. It's really important to have people that will quote unquote ride or, unalive with you, because I can't say that word on YouTube. But it's also important to have people that have a fresh take on things, man, and also aren't just seeing it from one perspective. It's not our faults, man. It's just how minds work. I mean, it doesn't fault anybody, but obviously a mindset towards a topic is just going to be a little bit different per individual. Meaning, I'm a journalist, okay? It's not my job to have an opinion to publicly announce. It's my job to have an opinion when I'm asked, but it's my job to put out the information that falls into the categories that solidifies what it could be. Meaning, yes, I can have my hypothesis and theories and such, and you need to work on those. But bad science is taking information and plugging it into the theory that you want it to be. Good science means you are creating a hypothesis or theory, but it might not, you don't want it to necessarily be true because it could be something bad. But if that's what the evidence is pointing towards, then that is what needs to be looked at. So that's why it's really important, just like you said, man, just to always have a fresh view on things. I mean, I love to learn, so I watch and learn things from, North American and history, but then I watch things from Latin American history. BBC's got some cool things about European history, and I love watching Native American things that have been shown to me that aren't necessarily mainstream. All of those things are amazing, and they all bring a different piece to the puzzle, more or less. And from all that, you can kind of gather a really good picture as to what's occurring, because obviously every sort of historical aspect is always going to be narrated from the perspective of who's writing it, and usually the victor, okay? But that doesn't necessarily mean it's the truth of history per se. You can look at a history book in another country and then look at a history book here in America. You're going to have different versions of who's the hero and etc. You see what I'm saying?
I do, yeah. And you have the cultural differences, and you look into the similarities and the patterns that you might exist globally with the topic that you're talking about.
Yes. So no, and that's just why it's super important, because you have, again, all these cultures that have such different views, such different historical references of when they existed, but yet you got these similarities. I mean, the Aztecs making Dogman references and showing them wearing the same things they're wearing, headbands. You have Anubis with the Egyptians. You have the Cynocephali. Then you have the Native American cultures. Then you have over in India where none of these people would have been speaking to each other. And when they were having all these occurrences, modern day religion wasn't even created, making references to some of the dog-headed people in the biblical aspects. These people were seeing that way before that was even created, and also these cultures wouldn't have necessarily had that type of religious view anyhow, because that's not the way they are, spiritual in their country. So it's really interesting, man. And I do look forward to getting you back on here at some point, dude, because I know you're super busy, but it's always great to pick your mind because you have a really good perspective on things. And I think it's important for people such as yourself to definitely be involved as much as possible with what we're trying to do here at the North American Dogman Project, because there is multifaceted things occurring. So I definitely need people such as you, man.
Yes, thank you for inviting me, and I feel like I learn something every time I'm on with you, so thank you.
If you've made it this far, you really are a legend, and I do appreciate the support. If you could, please like, subscribe, share, comment, and feed the algorithm. And until next time, remember, there are many things that lurk within the darkness.